You can call me crazy. You can call me manipulative. You can call me spiteful. I accept any of those labels, because in the end, I was all of those things. But I was also an abandoned woman, publicly humiliated, and discarded as if my love was a mistake. I didn't destroy his marriage just for revenge. I did this to show that some mistakes deserve to be paid with interest. My name is Amanda, and this story began 3 years ago, on what seemed like the happiest day of my life. I was holding hands with the man I loved, Henry, under a clear sky and eternal promises. We had been living together for 2 years. We talked about children, travel, a house in the countryside. He said I was the woman of his life, and I believed him. But nothing hurts more than blindly trusting someone and waking up with the bitter taste of having been deceived. That Tuesday morning, I saw Henrique leaving work early. He said he had to take care of some things with the car. But a friend of mine, who worked at the same company as him, sent me a message with a photo. Henrique was holding hands with another woman. She wasn't just a colleague. It wasn't a casual fling. It was a relationship, the kind where eyes shine, fingers intertwined, and affection is in the eyes. Her name was Melissa, young, recently hired, full of freshness, and with that air of someone who has never had to fight for anything. My heart exploded in my chest. I was shaking from head to toe. I called him right away. He answered, his voice sweet as if nothing was wrong. "Hey, love, who is Melissa?" I asked, cutting through any facade. There was silence, a silence that tore everything apart inside. It was that night that my world came crashing down. Henrique confessed that he was in love with someone else. He said that our love had turned into friendship, that he wanted something new, something light, live, and me? I was the woman who stood by him when he lost his job. I was the one who paid for half of his postgraduate studies. I was the one who defended him from his own mother when she said he was no good. And now, I was friendship? I didn't cry in front of him. I didn't beg. I just looked at her, cold, and said, "You'll regret this." But inside, I was bleeding. I spent weeks locked in my apartment crying, spewing anger, alternating between remembering our moments and cursing each one of them, until the last straw came, a photo on Instagram. Henry and Melissa, engaged. With the caption, "I have never felt anything so real." At that moment, something inside me died, and something new was born in its place. It wasn't love, it wasn't pain, it was something colder, sharper, a plan. I knew what I would do. I would destroy that marriage, and would make Henry wish, never having met me. You think the worst part is being cheated on, but no, the worst part is being forgotten as if you never existed. After that disgusting post with the caption, "I've never felt anything so real," something broke inside me, and like a silent hurricane, I started picking up the pieces, but not to rebuild, but to use as weapons. But before that came the real poison, public humiliation. It was during their civil wedding. Yes, I went, disguised at the back of the room. Do you know why? Because a part of me still needed to see it with my own eyes. I needed to see if all of that was real. If he really had the courage to erase me from his story, like that. And he did. When he walked in with that dark blue suit, the same one he wore on our 3rd anniversary, and his eyes fixed on her, as if she was the only thing in the world that mattered, it was like he had spit in my face. But the worst was yet to come. During the party, some people from our old common circle saw me. They didn't greet me. They just whispered. One of them, the cruelest, approached me in the bathroom. "Amanda, I thought you had gotten over it. But look, still stalking your ex's wedding? How pathetic." That sentence echoed in my head like a punch. She laughed. She just laughed and walked away, reapplying her lipstick. There, in the mirror, I stared at myself. Messy hair, smudged makeup. The woman I was dead, and the one who was born there no longer had the patience to be nice. And Henry? He didn't just move on. He erased me from everything. Photos, messages, even mutual friends. Disappeared. Network blocks. Absolute silence. For him, I was a closed chapter. But what he didn't know? It's just that poorly closed chapters have a cruel way of coming back in the last pages of the story. It was on a Sunday afternoon that I discovered that Melissa was pregnant, or at least, it seemed to be. A colleague sent me a photo of them leaving the clinic. I zoomed in, examined. Nothing escaped me. Henrique held an ultrasound folder and smiled like a lovesick idiot. It made me sick, but it also gave me ideas. If they were starting a family, so it was the perfect time to start destroying it. But I couldn't act angry. Revenge in anger is obvious. What I needed was to appear fragile. I needed Henrique to see me as the destroyed woman, and not as the woman behind the coup. So I did what no one would expect. I called him. Yes, after months of silence. And like a predictable idiot, he answered, "Hello? Hi. Sorry, I didn't mean to bother you. Amanda? What? Why are you calling?" I used the shaky voice, the strategic pause, the held breath. "I just need to tell you something. It's not about us. It's about me." Silence on the other side. "I'm pregnant, and I left it in the air like sweet poison." I could feel the shock on the other end of the line. Henry stammered. He said he needed to think. He said he didn't understand, that this changed everything. And that's what I wanted, that everything would start to change. That night, lying in the dark, with my hands on my own empty belly, I smiled for the first time in months. He thought I was about to ruin his life by accident, but little did he know that I was just at the beginning of a meticulously cruel plan. Lying about a pregnancy seems simple. A phone call, a rehearsed phrase, a forced tear. But what I did was more than a lie. It was a performance. A carefully staged play to make a man fall from the pedestal he had placed himself on. And in the days that followed my call, the first strands of the rope began to loosen. Henrique sent me a message the same day. "Amanda, is this serious? Are you sure? How did it happen? When?" I didn't answer. I let him gnaw on the inside. Silence is a powerful weapon. 2 days later, he showed up at my building. I saw it through the intercom camera. Messy hair, lost look. The man who had previously been all confident executive pose now looked like a boy lost in the middle of the chaos he himself created. "Amanda, let me up. We need to talk." I left. Of course I did. When he walked in, I could already see that doubt was eating away at him. But I was prepared. I spread a few boxes of prenatal vitamins on the table. A fake test sheet was folded on the counter. I made a point of keeping one hand on my stomach. Something subtle, almost instinctive. And I spoke in a low voice, as if I were still in shock. "I found out a week ago. I thought it was a virus. I went to the doctor, and it came back positive." Enrique ran his hands over his face. He sat on the sofa. He began to do mental calculations. "But how? We broke up months ago. You came here on my birthday, remember? You stayed late. I thought that it was just a farewell." Silence. I saw him fall apart. Not for the baby, but for the guilt. Henry was never the type to take responsibility. He liked to appear righteous, even when he was broken inside. And now he thought he had gotten his ex-girlfriend pregnant, while he was about to build a new life with another woman, a woman who thought he was pure and loyal. Ah, sweet Melissa. And that's when I started tightening the knots. He said he didn't want anything from him, that he could rest easy, that I just needed him to know. "You have the right to know you have a child on the way, even if you never see it." The perfect words. Those who carry weight but seem magnanimous. He left upset, and that's when the downfall began. At work, he started arriving late. I missed meetings. Apparently, he had an anxiety attack in the elevator. I heard about this from a mutual friend, who thought it was strange that he started talking to himself in the parking lot. Melissa began to get suspicious, because men like that don't know how to lie under pressure. Henrique began to distance himself, disappear for a few hours, invent disconnected stories, and she, who used to post a photo with him every day, started to disappear from the networks. But I didn't stop there. I sent an anonymous email to the company where he worked. Subject: improper conduct, possible extramarital relationship in the corporate environment. I didn't mention names, just insinuation. Printouts of conflicting times and old photos of him entering my house. With strategic dates, they opened an internal audit. Melissa was summoned. Henry, too. It was enough for his boss to start seeing him in a different light, and while his reputation slipped like sand through his fingers, I remained distant, cool, and immaculate. Just a pregnant woman, trying to move forward. The irony was that even without a belly, without a baby, and without a future with him, I had everything under control. Henry was trapped in a trap of consequences, all of his own making, but executed by me, and he still had no idea how big a fall awaited him. The most curious thing about destroying someone is that deep down, you first need to rebuild yourself. After months of being buried in pain, something in me began to rekindle. It wasn't self-love, not yet. It was purpose. My life, which was previously aimless, now has a clear focus. And like a cold architect, I began to design each stage of Henry's ruin. While he was struggling with guilt and excuses, I headed downtown. I went into a stationery store and bought a new notebook. Black cover, no lines. On the first page I wrote, "It takes time to bring a man down, but it doesn't need mercy." There I began to draw up my plan. Column by column, lies he told me, key moments with Melissa, phrases he said to appear ethical, his vulnerabilities at work. Henry was too vain to hide his weaknesses, During our relationship, he always boasted about the trust his boss had in him, about the image he projected as a man of integrity. I decided I would attack where it hurt the most: reputation. But first, I needed to keep the pregnancy theater going. I created a fake profile of a nursing technician. I used AI to create a generic photo and even a common name, Juliana Neves. With this profile, I sent an anonymous message to Melissa. Hi, I don't know if you know, but your fiancé has been with a patient who may be pregnant with his child. He's been coming to appointments alone. I waited. 2 hours later, Melissa posted a sentence on her story. Masks always fall. I only feel sorry for those who are still fooled by characters. The seed of doubt was planted, but I needed something stronger, something that would put Henry's back against the wall. That's when I had the riskiest idea: to falsify a court notification. I used a petition template, simulated an official recognition of paternity protocol, and sent an envelope by mail with return receipt. The paper stated, Mr. Henrique Silveira is being notified regarding a possible action to recognize paternity and pay for prenatal care, according to information presented by Ms. Amanda Ribeiro. Nothing that had any legal value, but everything seemed real. A week later, Henrique showed up at my apartment in a panic. Amanda, you filed a lawsuit? What do you mean? This is too serious. I can't. I feigned surprise. I opened the door slowly. I spoke with a choked voice. I didn't want to get to this point, but you disappear, then come back confused. I'm alone in this, Henrique. He looked like a cornered rat. Melissa, she freaked out. She said that if this is true, she'll break up with me. My job is at risk. I'm losing everything. And you think I didn't lose anything? He looked at me, for the first time in months, with fear. That's when I realized the scales had tipped. Henrique, who previously controlled everything, was now a puppet in my hand. And me? I was the author of a script where every act was coldly written, every line planned, every tear strategically rehearsed. But the final blow was still missing, that turnaround that would make him lose the only asset that still sustained him: social respect. And that's why I decided to go even deeper. I created a profile called Amanda Single Mom and started posting emotional posts in women's groups on LinkedIn and Facebook. Fictional stories, but real enough to go viral. I was abandoned while pregnant, but I didn't give up. He moved on with someone else, but I'm still standing firm for my baby. The internet is that martyr, and in less than a week, one of those posts reached 12,000 likes and hundreds of supportive comments. Someone crossed the data, someone connected the dots, and someone commented, "Is that Henrique Silveira? The one from Riventech? I worked with him. I always thought he was a bit slippery." That was all it took. The dominoes started to fall, and while all eyes turned to him, I maintained my silence. I just watched, and he waited for the right moment to make the ground disappear beneath his feet. Well done revenge is not a scream, it's a whisper. It's like water infiltration in an old wall. You don't notice it until it's all compromised. And that's how I moved. Take it easy, with precision, with the kind of coldness that only a betrayed, ignored, and underestimated woman is capable of carrying. Henrique began to live on alert. His cell phone was now vibrating all the time, but he could only answer on speakerphone. With Melissa around, he became a mediocre actor trying to hide a script written by someone else. She was suspicious. I knew it. But what she didn't know yet is that the greatest poison would come from herself. I created a fake profile of a man, a generic, friendly name, and started commenting on Melissa's old posts. Simple things. You've always been amazing. He's lucky. I never understood what you saw in that guy. And left that open. Messages that seemed to be from an acquaintance, but with a slightly intimate tone. Melissa didn't respond. But a week later, he did what I expected. He blocked Henrique on social media for 2 days. I knew this because, yes, I still had access to his old email. Password saved in backup. His mistake. I saw notifications of relationship status change. I saw emails from the company's HR asking for a position on recent conduct. And above all, I saw the trail of chaos that I myself was cultivating. The next step required something riskier, approaching a former colleague of Melissa's. I contacted Renata, a friend of hers from college. I got her number from an old Facebook group. I used an excuse. I said it was from an NGO that did interviews with inspiring women. Renata loved the idea. During the conversation, I casually mentioned, "You met Melissa when she was still with Henrique, right?" "Yeah. Actually, I think she got together with him when he was still dating his ex." Kind of confusing. "Really? Wow. So she was kind of the other one?" Renata laughed, not realizing the trap. "In practice, yes, but she says it was fate, that he was unhappy in his other relationship, that kind of thing. I recorded everything, the audio, the phrase, the laughter. Then I created a fake email, veracidademulheragmail.com, and sent the audio to the HR department at Melissa's company with the following text. An employee involved with a superior, starting the relationship while still in a previous position. Is this compatible with your values? I didn't sign. I didn't need to. Days later, Melissa was temporarily removed from the company. Henrique, in turn, was transferred to a smaller unit, a downgrade disguised as a strategic reshuffle. The man who used to walk with his chin held high now avoided looking people in the eye. I saw a photo of him posted by a former colleague, haggard appearance, unshaven, absent smile. But don't think I was immune. Lying every day is tiring. Sustaining a pregnancy that doesn't exist requires control, especially when friends start asking, when relatives start showing concern, when your body doesn't change. I wore loose blouses. I invented nausea, consultations. I even rented a room in a clinic for an afternoon to take photos at the reception and post them as if it were a prenatal checkup. But inside, the guilt sometimes hit, in waves, not for him, but for the woman I used to be, before the pain, before the thirst for revenge, before discovering that, yes, we are capable of destroying someone, and enjoying the feeling of power that it gives. I started having nightmares. I dreamed that the baby that didn't exist blamed me. I woke up sweating, with my hand on my stomach, empty, but it soon passed, because the next day, when I opened my email and saw the chaos increasing, I smiled. It was like gasoline on a fire. In the last week of that month, I received an unexpected message. It was from Melissa. Can we talk? Just between the two of us. I think you deserve to be heard. Woman to woman. I took a while to respond, not because I was in doubt, but because I needed to rehearse. I would be vulnerable. I would be honest. I would be convincing. And when Melissa opened her heart, I would stick the knife in with all the care that only a wounded woman can have. The game was moving forward, and every piece, every lie, every silent movement, it was one more step towards the final collapse, and he was coming. You know that moment when the house of cards is shaking, but it doesn't fall yet? Henrique was right there, but the tremor was already visible. Melissa invited me to talk in a discreet cafe, far from the center. I arrived first. I sat facing the door, as if preparing for an emotional ambush. But I was the ambusher. She was the bait. Melissa arrived with tense shoulders and eyes that hid despair. He sat down slowly. He made a point of not touching me, not even with his eyes. He took a sip of coffee and began. I didn't come to fight. I just want to understand. I want to know if it's true. If you're really pregnant with his child. I paused dramatically. I took a deep breath. I left my eyes a little wet. Staging was my art. I'm not asking you for anything. I only told you because I thought he had the right to know. But, honestly, he's not ready to be a father. She bit her lower lip. His hands shook. He's changed, Amanda. Ever since this all started. Paranoid. Twisting everything I say. One minute he says he's going to take responsibility for the child. The next he says he wants to disappear. I let out a broken sigh. I don't want him to disappear. I want him to look in the mirror, to realize what he did to us, to you, to me, to what we believed in. Melissa swallowed hard. You know, sometimes I wonder if the woman in his life wasn't you all along, but he's a coward. And I became an accomplice to that cowardice. There, at that moment, something flashed in her eyes. Blame. Melissa was sinking, not because of me, but because, for the first time, reality had found the mask she wore. 2 days later, I received a message from Henrique. Melissa left me. 3 words, almost no punctuation. A broken man, a man with no escape. I didn't answer, but I made sure to leave the preview checked. At work, he started making mistakes. A project was delivered with a serious flaw, something that, according to the company's LinkedIn group, caused a contract to be canceled. That same week, photos of him with Melissa, all old, were deleted. And in a short Instagram post, she wrote, "What begins in lies ends in ruin." Comments are closed, but the rumors began. Colleagues from his company sent me screenshots of WhatsApp groups. Did you see Enrique's ex saying she's pregnant? They say he was with both of them at the same time. There was even an anonymous complaint of unethical behavior, right? He deserved it. He was always too smooth. Henrique became a laughingstock. What he feared most, losing social respect, the image, the reputation. And I didn't even need to raise my voice. But I wasn't done yet. I decided to schedule a new appointment. This time, a nurse friend agreed to help me. She pretended to be a doctor's assistant and called his number. "Hello? This is Clínica Vida Plena. It's about patient Amanda Ribeiro. We need to confirm payment for next week's ultrasound. Are you responsible? He hung up right away. Minutes later, he sent me a message. Why are you doing this to me? Why now? Why like this? I waited. I replied an hour later. You're just reaping. I've just stopped being the fertile soil for your lies. He didn't answer. And then, confirmation that he was sinking came in an audio message he sent to a friend, who, ironically, was also an acquaintance of mine. I don't know who I am anymore. My career is going down the drain. The woman of my life hates me, and now there's a child on the way. I've lost myself. Listening to that audio was like tasting distilled revenge. It wasn't a scream. It wasn't a confession. It was surrender. But the final blow was still missing, because by then Henry had lost his wife, reputation, and control. But I wanted him to lose himself, that he would look in the mirror and not recognize himself, that he would sink in a sea he himself dug, but think it was the tide that took him. And that's when I started preparing the last act. Every castle built on pride falls, but what is built on lies collapses with an explosion. Henry was already in ruins. Melissa had left him. The work was hanging by a thread, the public image in tatters. But he still believed in one thing: pregnancy. That was his last link with reality, the only line of meaning amidst the chaos. And that's what I needed to cut. It was on a Wednesday, exactly 72 days after my first call, that destiny, or my precision, chose the perfect stage. The company where Henrique worked would hold an internal event to restructure the team, something formal, with presentations, recognition of projects, and a message of optimism. I found out about this through an institutional email. Yes, still logged into your account. There I was sure. It would be there. I prepared everything as a clean crime, with a calm that scared even myself. On the day of the event, I wore sober clothing, a dark blouse, no heavy makeup. I arrived early at the hall where the seminar would take place, a discreet convention center in the South Zone. I walked in with a printed badge, fake name, fake company. No one questioned it. I waited for the right time. Henrique would go on stage to present a company case study. They were trying to rebuild him, I learned from internal messages. Image, always the image. When the microphone was handed to him, he smiled nervously. He was thinner, paler, but he still tried to maintain the facade. And it was exactly when he started talking that I stood up from the audience. I walked to the side of the stage, visible, without fear. I opened the folder I was carrying with me and took out a sheet of paper printed with large black letters. The sun does not exist. The truth will appear. It was like thunder in a closed room. Some people turned, others froze. Henrique looked at me and, for a few seconds, he didn't seem to understand, until the penny dropped. He let go of the microphone. Amanda, what is this? And then, with the most frightening calm I could muster, I spoke out loud. I didn't scream. I just let everyone hear. I lied. There is no sun. There never was. But you believed it. Because deep down, you knew you deserved to suffer. Absolute silence. It was as if the air had been sucked out of the room. You destroyed a woman, a relationship, a promise. And me? I only showed you the taste of your own cruelty. Someone tried to get me out of there, but I didn't run. I handed the sheet to one of the directors and walked away. Henrique couldn't continue. I found out later that he collapsed in the dressing room. There was a crisis. He tried to deny it. Then he tried to justify it. He said it was a setup by a crazy ex. But then, the prints started to circulate. His messages, his calls, his fake notes, all. Because while he was struggling, I had already prepared a complete folder sent to journalists and corporate groups, a dossier, a fall announced. In the following weeks, the company opened an investigation. Henrique was dismissed by mutual agreement. But the truth, he was expelled. Melissa didn't come back. She deleted everything. She disappeared from the networks. He moved to another city, according to rumors. And me? I returned to my silence. I didn't publish anything. I didn't brag. I just disappeared, like smoke after a fire. But deep down, I felt it. I knew. I had won. What did he feel? Shame? Despair? The kind of ruin you can't see but carry around for years. And me? I felt the bitter taste of victory. Because yes, even if it was a dirty victory, it was mine. But every victory comes with a price. And the question that haunted me in the following nights was, and now that he's fallen, what's left of me? Because in the end, the plan ended, but the emptiness he left still burned within me. And the worst, I had proven that I was capable of anything, even pretending to live a life to end someone else's. When the dust settles, That's when the true destruction reveals itself. The masks had already fallen, the facades were on the ground, and Henry, finally, was alone. In the days following the public exposure, I followed from afar, without interfering. It was no longer necessary. Revenge already had a life of its own. The company released a generic note. We are committed to the ethics and well-being of all our employees. Situations that compromise this commitment will be treated with due responsibility. In practice, Henrique was dismissed. Without warning, no chance of starting over there. People who previously called him a reference now avoided even mentioning his name. He became an uncomfortable whisper in the halls of Riventech. Melissa, in turn, disappeared. He deleted his profiles, asked to move to another city, and even changed his number. And me? I just watched, like someone watching a building collapse from afar, knowing that they placed every explosive in its place. But then the echoes began. The cracks that weren't in the plan. The consequences, that caught up with me. The first came in the form of a phone call. It was my mother. Amanda, the neighbor from 304, asked me if you lost the baby. What's this story? Are you really pregnant? I froze. My mother didn't know anything. I had distanced myself from her precisely to protect this performance. But now, the lie was overflowing. I had to lie again. I had a miscarriage. I couldn't talk to anyone. And I hung up, trembling. The weight of the farce was beginning to suffocate. The second consequence came like a punch. A close friend, who I thought was loyal, called me to talk. We sat in the park where we used to run together. I know you did all that. I remained silent. She continued. I saw your name in the sender of the anonymous emails. It was hidden in the metadata. Enrique sent me the files, asking for help to defend himself. He was desperate. She didn't report me, but he also didn't look at me like before. You destroyed him, and I understand why. But you destroyed yourself too, Amanda. It was there that I began to realize the line between justice and obsession. It had been crossed. Henrique tried to start over. I knew he interviewed at other companies, but the story followed him like a shadow. Rumors, print screens, speculations. On LinkedIn, anonymous comments appeared on recruiters' posts. This guy is not trustworthy. You fooled too many people around here. There was no longer any need to invent. His name was already burned, irrecoverable. One day, I received an unexpected message. It was his. Congratulations. You won. I lost everything. Just tell me one thing. Was that all you really wanted? I stared at those words like someone staring at a broken mirror. I didn't answer, because deep down, I didn't even know anymore. I started having panic attacks. I would wake up in the middle of the night, sweating, hearing a baby crying that didn't exist. It was like my body was trying to punish my mind. I looked for a therapist. In the first session, I couldn't say anything. I just cried. For 20 minutes. I cried for Amanda, who believed in love. For Amanda, who planned revenge with more details than a wedding. For the woman who now looked in the mirror and saw nothing. And yet, even with all this pain, I didn't regret it. Because Henry was not a victim. He was an accomplice in his own downfall. He had choices, and he chose to lie, to betray, to erase. I just turned on the light, and I let everyone see. But what nobody tells you about revenge, it's just that when it ends, you don't go back to being who you were. You are another, someone who knows what he is capable of, and you're going to have to learn to live with it. I sat on the couch, on a silent afternoon, with a cold cup of tea in my hands, and opened the black notebook where I had written the entire plan, page by page, each phase, each name, every move. And then, I tore it all up. I burned it. And I watched the flames consume every lie, every line of hate, every trail of destruction, because what I wanted, I already had. Henry was on the floor, and I was free, or at least trying to figure out what it meant. I was once told that revenge is like drinking poison and waiting for the other person to die, but that's a lie, because sometimes the other person does die, inside, little by little, and you watch, in silence. Henrique was no longer the man who abandoned me. He was now an avoided name, a shadow of reputation, a man isolated by his own decisions, amplified, yes, by my hand. I never saw him in person again. A few months after the scandal, I learned that he had moved to the countryside. He went to live with a cousin, disappeared from the networks. It disappeared. Melissa also left. They say that today he works in marketing at a small agency in Curitiba. Had to start over. Maybe she has matured, or just survived, like me. But what about me? I followed. Little by little, I began to rescue the parts of myself that were still whole. I went back to therapy. I took up painting again, something I loved before him. I stopped faking smiles. And for the first time, I let the real Amanda show. Not the wounded one, not the calculating one. A real. With flaws, yes, but owner of her own choices. For months, I wondered if it was worth it. If everything I did really paid off. The answer? I still don't know. Because every revenge story has a cost. And mine was high. I lost friendships. I pushed my family away. I became someone I never imagined I could become. But I also discovered a strength that I would never have found in naivety. I learned that loving someone doesn't protect us from being betrayed. And forgiving is not always liberating. Sometimes what sets you free is the act of showing that you are not disposable. I was the villain in Henrique's narrative, to a former, unbalanced person, the woman who went too far. And maybe I really did go. But only those who have been left on the ground know the taste of dust. And only those who have swallowed this dust know how good it feels to make those who knocked you down taste it too. Today, I take my life more calmly. I don't tell this story to many, but sometimes, alone at night, I think, does he remember me? When you close your eyes, do you see my face on the stage in that auditorium? Or do you hear the words I said? You're just reaping. I've just stopped being the fertile soil for your lies, because that was the purest truth of this whole farce. He created his own disaster. I only revealed the rotten foundation. What about me? No, I'm not a heroine, and I don't even want to be. I don't fit the villain mold either. There is no evil laughter here, just heavy silences and memories that sometimes burn. But today, I sleep in peace, because I told myself that no one will ever bring me down again. No one will bend me anymore. And if one day I love again, it will be with my eyes open. Because now I know, one should never underestimate the power of a betrayed woman, especially when she learns to use pain like a blade.